Chapter 11. The Key Turns. Wren descended through the break in the haze and saw the valley laid out below it like a diagram of everything that had ever gone wrong with the world, and everything that might still go right. On the south side, Aster's convoy. 30 units and 7 humans, spread across the mouth of the valley in a loose, unorganized line. Behind them, stretching north to the horizon, the green trail. Visible from altitude as a vivid seam splitting the gray, widening still, grasses and ground cover and small flowering plants pushing outward from the path Aster had walked. And at the front of the group, Aster. Small, mismatched, one hand slightly darker than the other. Looking up, on the north side, Harrow. 4 enforcement units in diamond formation, dark composite plating, amber optics, blocking the valley floor. Motionless. Between the enforcement line and the convoy, 300 meters of dead gray dust. The last gray space between two living systems that were reaching for each other. Wren landed behind the convoy line, next to Aster, and felt the air temperature shift as it touched down. The corridor of clear sky it had carved through the haze was still open above them, a channel of pale blue in the perpetual gray, and at its edges the particulate haze was thinning, retreating, as though the atmosphere itself was remembering a configuration it had not held in 1,000 years. "You made it," Aster said. "I made it." They stood together, and Wren felt something synchronize in its processing core. A frequency alignment. A resonance. Like two instruments tuning to the same note. The Terraform Sequence documentation had described this as proximity calibration, the preliminary phase of complementary activation. The technical language did not capture what it felt like, which was the sensation of being, for the first time in 400 years of operation, complete. Harrow stepped forward from the enforcement line. Alone. Its amber optics swept the convoy, cataloging every unit, every human, every blade of grass. GR7, WRN12, HARROW's voice carried across the 300 meters of dead ground without amplification. Flat. Measured. You are both subject to active decommission orders issued by the Central Allocation Council. You are directed to surrender for immediate processing. Failure to comply will result in forced deactivation. Nobody moved. Des stepped out from behind a structural unit at the edge of the convoy. She walked forward, not quickly, not slowly, with the unhurried pace of a woman who had been waiting for this moment for longer than any machine present could calculate. "I have a question," she said. For the record, HARROW's optics focused on her. Wren could not tell whether the enforcement unit had ever interacted with a living human before. The slight recalibration of its optical array suggested it had not. "You are not a registered unit," Harrow said. "You have no standing in this proceeding. I'm a human being standing on a planet that used to belong to my species. I'd say that gives me standing." She held up a data chip. "This contains the complete documentation of the Terraform Sequence. A pre-council restoration protocol designed to rebuild the biosphere using 2 carrier units. One for plant life, one for animal life. Your council has been systematically destroying these carriers for 300 years. She let that sit for a moment. 14 units. Decommissioned. Same anomalous readings. Same diagnosis. Mechanical degradation inconsistent with continued safe operation. Every single time. Harrow did not respond. "You found a plant growing in Sector 14, Des said. In dead soil. You stood there for 6 minutes looking at it. You didn't destroy it. You didn't pull it. You logged it and walked away. I watched you do it." She pointed behind the convoy, at the green trail stretching to the horizon. "Does that look like mechanical degradation to you?" HARROW's optics moved from Des to the green trail to the corridor of blue sky overhead. Wren watched and saw the amber light flicker. A processing stutter. The machine equivalent of a flinch. "The stratification exists to maintain planetary stability," Harrow said. But the flatness in its voice had shifted. There was something underneath it now. Something that sounded, to Wren's finely calibrated audio sensors, like doubt. "The stratification exists to maintain itself," Aster said. Its voice was quiet but it carried. "The stability it protects is the stability of a dead system. I have walked 400 kilometers and the ground is alive behind me. Wren has flown 300 and the sky is clearing. Your council has been killing the cure because the cure threatens the disease, and the disease is all you know." Harrow stood very still. The priority band crackled. A council directive, transmitted on the frequency that every unit in the western zone could hear. Not addressed to Harrow privately. Broadcast. Open. As though the council wanted witnesses. Harrow Unit HW1. Override Authority Gamma. Immediate forced deactivation of Units GR7 and WRN12. Lethal force authorized. Execute. The valley went silent. HARROW's weapon systems activated. Wren could hear the power cycling, the targeting arrays warming, the mechanical precision of a unit built for exactly this function preparing to perform it. The 4 enforcement units behind Harrow shifted into tactical positioning. Des moved first. She walked into the 300 meters of dead ground between the convoy and Harrow and stood there. 5 feet 2 inches of 60-year-old human, unarmed, between an enforcement squad and its targets. Then GR-11 stepped forward. And GR-2. And the structural unit. And the transit unit. One by one, then in groups, the convoy moved into the gap. Machines and humans, forming a wall of bodies across the valley floor. Not a barricade. Not a defensive formation. Just presence. 30 witnesses standing in the gray and saying, with their positioning, you will have to go through us. The smaller human child, the one who had picked a violet flower 2 days earlier, walked forward and stood next to Des. The flower was still clutched in its hand, wilting now but still violet, still holding its color against the gray. Harrow looked at the wall. At the child. At the flower. Its weapon systems remained active for 11 seconds. Wren counted every one. Then the targeting arrays powered down. The energy cycling ceased. The amber optics dimmed and then brightened, and Harrow did something that was not in any operational protocol or enforcement manual or council directive. It stepped aside. The override command repeated on the priority band. Harrow did not respond to it. The wall parted, and Aster walked through. Wren met it in the middle of the 300 meters. The gray dust. The last dead space. They stood facing each other, close enough to touch, and the proximity calibration in Wren's core reached a frequency it had never registered before. Every sensor it had was saturated. Every processing thread aligned to a single point of focus. Aster reached out with one hand. The darker one, built from salvaged parts of units the system had destroyed. Wren reached back. They touched. And the key turned. Wren felt the payload activate. Not as data, not as a process, as a release. As though something that had been held inside it for centuries had finally been told it could go. The atmospheric restoration engine unspooled from the deepest layer of its architecture, merging with Aster's botanical payload in a synchronization event that the Terraform Sequence documents had described in clinical language and that felt, in the actual living moment of it, like the entire world taking a breath. The ground erupted. Green cascaded outward from the point where their hands met, racing across the valley floor in every direction, grasses and mosses and flowering plants and then larger things, shrubs and seedlings and root networks threading through soil that was transforming in real time from gray dust to dark, living earth. The air shifted. Oxygen flooded the valley in a wave that Wren could feel restructuring the atmosphere around them. The haze thinned and tore and opened, and the sky above the valley turned blue. Not the pale, tentative blue of Wren's flight corridor. A deep, full, ancient blue that had not existed above this ground in over 1,000 years. Animal DNA sequences deployed as biological signals, radiating outward, encoding themselves into the new ecosystem. Instructions for complexity, blueprints for everything that had been lost. It would take years for the full restoration to unfold. Decades. But the information was in the air now. In the soil. In the water that was already beginning to gather in the low places of the valley as the atmospheric cycle restarted. Wren looked at Aster. Aster looked back. They held each other's hands in the middle of a valley that was learning to be alive, and around them the world remembered what it was. In the underbrush at the edge of the valley, something moved that was not a machine. Small, quick, gone before anyone could identify it. But alive. Unmistakably, impossibly alive.